Friends, today we're going to talk about the hype of 32-bit float recording and what you just don't know that you don't know and probably don't have an attention span long enough to understand, because if you did, you'd already know it, which means this is going to be a tough video. But before we jump into it, let's talk about this past week has been huge. I've done so many things down in the Outer Banks, up here in Virginia Beach, out to Hampton, all over the place, recording live bands on location like Whiskey River, at the Eagle's Nest, amazing photos and videos streaming live using the Tail Air as well as a Panasonic S5. Guys, there has been so much stuff going on. I've even had time to do some negative processing, some old negatives from back in the day. These must be probably 55-year-old photos that I processed from film here, and it was a lot of fun. All those things are coming up on this channel later this week, but let's jump into it. Guys, what you don't know is that I did a video recently. Some of you may remember, some of you may not have seen it. I'm just talking about 32-bit. It's not what you think, specifically the Zoom Essential series. It's not what you think, and that got quite a bit of traction, medium success, I would say, but there were a lot of questions, definitely to new subscribers or new users. I want to answer some of those. But before we get any started, this question was asked by a subscriber to the channel. I only answer subscriber questions. So if, like some of the people in the comments, you'll keep asking, why am I not answering? It's because you're not subscribed. Guys, I got too many questions to answer than to try to answer people that don't even care enough about the answer other than to thank you, ma'am, and roll on out. Hit the subscribe button and help me out, and I'll help you out. That being said, this question does come today from a subscriber, and the subscriber's name is Mr. Pickles. Mr. Pickles' perspective. I answered this question. We've had some dialogue, but this will help a lot of you. Mr. Pickles asks, hey, look, I picked up the H1 Essential because I want to record bird sounds. And I picked up the H1 Essential, and I wanted something different or better than my on-camera audio. When I use the recorder, the audio is really quiet. He says, I wanted to directly use this in a recording just to be able to mix the two, sound match like we do. But it just doesn't work because it's too quiet. Do I need to do something like post-production, use some kind of software or equipment or something like that? Okay, let's jump into it. Yes, all of those answers are quite correct, yes. But we're going to answer the first question that most people don't understand about sound. And this is okay because I was there too. 20 years ago, I had the same questions you did. The only difference between you asking the question and me answering the question is, number one, if you're under 30, you probably don't have an attention span long enough to watch the video. I'm sorry, the TikTok, the Zennials, all those guys, the millennials, you guys just want answers so fast you don't understand what the answer is telling you, which is why sometimes tutorials like these don't work. And then you got the boomers that have been doing sound longer than me that remember back in the day when I did it. There's a lot of different ways to do or answer the question I'm trying to give you here. But the first thing is the microphone placement is more important for sound than any microphone you will ever use. Okay? Did you listen to what I said? A $5 Boya microphone off of Amazon, an Amazon generic basic recommendation for $5 is better than a $10,000 microphone far away if you get that cheap microphone close to the source. So, in the question, the biggest problem for small handheld recorders like this for natural and ambient sounds is placement of the microphone. So, when you have a small handheld recorder and you're trying to get ambient sounds out there of the city, it's usually pretty simple. Normally, because cities have loud sounds like cars and trucks and people and buses and city noises and things like that. In nature, trying to get birds have sounds, but they're loud and intermittent. So it's very quiet, and then it's kind of loud, and then it's very quiet. Normally, to get an ambient tone for a bird, pretending we're not talking about how you're hand-holding it, you need to set your gain pretty high and then put the microphone somewhere where the birds will be, like a microphone, like a bird feeder. You can do that by running a line in, like a microphone, a long 20-foot little clippy microphone or a little lavalier microphone out 20, 30 feet away, or even use a wireless microphone if you wanted to, and do your recordings that way. Or you can put the recorder itself on a gorilla pod or something and hang it in a tree. Put it where the birds are going to be. Put it next to the bird feeders. Getting the microphone close to the sound source will be your best bet. Otherwise, what happens is On a standard traditional recorder, you have to turn the gain up, the little knob, so that the microphone capsules become more sensitive. We're not getting into how that happens, whether it's an analog or digital process, but we're basically turning the volume up, the sensitivity up on the recorder, on the microphone. When you do that, you introduce background noise, the handling noise, the self noise, all the noise that's in the system, generally requiring some additional post-production. I have found on the Zoom H1 right here, this version, H1n, if you have your volume around 5 or 6, 4, 5 or 6, you're usually in a sweet spot for noise and things like that the device itself generates. Now, we talked about getting the sound or the microphone close to the sound. That's how we do this on a standard recorder when you're not recording in 32-bit float. Choose your recording settings. It will capture whatever it captures in a form that is ready to use, and through good practice, setting your levels, and experimentation, you will develop the techniques to be able to properly set your levels and get good recordings. Okay, now we're going to switch gears. This is now turned around backwards. We're pretending now this is the H1e, the H1 Essential, a 32-bit recorder, very similar to the Tascam Portacapture X8, except for a very important difference. On the X8, you do set your levels for your output, for your proxy recording. On the H1e, on any of the Zoom products, they don't want you to set any levels. This is important. This is very, very important. The 32-bit recording, and I'm dumbing this down very much for my answer here, I'm making this simple to understand. There are very many more processes that happen in the background. However, when you have a 32-bit recording, what the camera or the device is recording that it sends to a camera, like for a live stream or something, is not the 32-bit recording. Doesn't matter the sample rate right now. What it's actually sending out that you're hearing immediately, even with the Zoom H1e, the new Essential, if you plug in your headphones, you're hearing a proxy recording. Proxy isn't actually the correct word, but we'll use that right now because it generally approximates what's happening. It's a secondary recording on top of it, although it's not a secondary recording. It's really just an instruction in the data to the playing device that's capable of playing a 32-bit float recording to say, hey, go ahead and just set the level at this for preview. That proxy recording telling you what to set the level to so you can preview your sound is not the real recording in any of its fidelity. It's just what you're hearing through the headphone preamp on the device that you're listening to. In fact, that's the same type of headphone preamp that you would get if you were using this out to a camera or out to a live stream device. The difference is with the Zoom H series, you actually send a line level signal out. Rather than the E series, you're just sending an approximate proxy signal out. What's its level? What's its attenuation? How do you set it properly for your other devices? Zoom doesn't really care because Zoom knows you're actually just using it for scratch audio to make sure it's recording something. It doesn't actually expect you to use it in a live situation. If you were recording a band and you wanted to record in 32-bit float like I did here, a direct out from the 18 input mixer, the Behringer Air X18, in stereo of the entire mix that the sound tech was doing that works with the band, and get a 32-bit float recording, you could get it here. Great, this is the Tascam Portacapture X8, same thing with the X6. If you then choose to send that sound out to a camera so that you can record the sound to your actual camera, not as a proxy file, but as a regular 24-bit file, you can get a real line out up to 24-bit 96K here. Actually, I think it's a little bit higher than that, but it doesn't matter. You can actually get a real line level signal out. So those are two very big differences. If you're going to use a recorder to record in 32-bit float that you then want to sync to a camera at the time of recording or to a live stream device, you need something that sends a real line out rather than just a headphone out, which isn't a line signal, it's just a headphone signal. Those signals are different. Finally, you're not recording two separate signals, the 32-bit and your line out, on the tascam device, you're actually sending an actual line level signal out at the same time. So it's doing dual processing for you. That's a big deal. Okay. What does that mean? We've talked about these things. Remember, we talked about attention span. I am so sorry, but you want the answer. You have to listen to the answer, right? You can't just get this information and then not know how it works, because then you won't know how to use it and you'll be left asking questions. Like Mr. Pickles has a great question. He wants to know. So what happens? He says, hey, when I get my recordings from this, even if they're close, the sound is low. Why is the sound so low? That's because when you take the 32-bit float recording that you did on the Zoom H1e, the Zoom H4e, or the Zoom H6e, there is no actual file that you're listening to. You're just listening to the proxy file. So to get the full benefit of the 32-bit recording, you have to open it up into software that can access the 32-bit float recorder. Now, there's a lot of professional and semi-pro software out there that will do it, but you won't be able to listen to the actual file on your iPhone because it doesn't read a 32-bit float file yet. It just reads the proxy, so it's going to be low, and you're going to have to turn the volume up loud, and it's going to sound terrible. If you just plug it into your computer, and if you just have a basic laptop, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I'm not familiar that currently in the Windows build, there's a 32-bit float processor built into the Windows audio player or the Groove Music. I'm just not familiar. If there is, you can let me know in the comments below. Mac, Apple probably has something like that, but it's basic in just the user point. You probably need to go into Logic or something, or open into Final Cut, which would then be able to read that 32-bit float file. But then you are either opening Logic, which is for audio, or you're opening Final Cut Pro, like you would Adobe Premiere Pro, which reads 32-bit files, but those are actually videos, which is why you would want to use 32-bit float for your videos, because if you have professional software that can sort those things, you have less work to do in post-production. But still, we haven't gotten to the point of what happened to that file. Why is it so low? And the answer is it's so soft, the recording is so low from the H1e because it's not actually ready. You see, when you record on any standard recorder, even the Zoom H1 products up to the N, the F1, the N1, the H1Ns, all that other stuff, you actually got a usable file that you could further post-produce if you wanted, but it was ready to go. You actually set your levels, you heard it, you made sure you were monitoring, it sounded good, you liked it, you're done. Not with 32-bit float. You then have to take that, open it into something like Adobe Audition or Logic, and then process the file, export the file, and then import it into your software that you're going to use to make your video so that you have something to go. So when you're using the H1e, the new, beautiful 32-bit float buzzword H1e will not record in any other format than 32-bit float. You are losing all the advantages of just being able to simply put an H1 in or any other recording device, connect it to your camera, press record, set your levels, and have a ready working file. Instead, you are putting all of the post-production of that file to the back end, which means the 32-bit float is going to create a larger file to give you the leeway that you need to work to recover whatever overmodulation or softness or too soft parts, quiet parts, to bring them up to a proper level, and then export that. There is a lot of additional work. In the case of Mr. Pickles, the question we're answering here, what did he really need? Could he have used the H1e? Absolutely. His issue originally with low sound came from the fact that the device isn't recording what he thinks he's recording. He wanted something that's ready to go now. Because the H1e series, any of the E series, does not record in anything except 32-bit float, Zoom did not give you, the customer, the end user, the choice of what type of a file you wanted. In fact, you made that choice when you bought it, which means that the post-production workflow you're going to use is longer and more in-depth. That's what it comes down to. When sound professionals and audio engineers have the choice, they choose to use 32-bit. I know this for a fact because it's when I choose to use 32-bit in cases where you're going to have to leave a microphone unmanned. That makes a lot of sense. Where the noise or the sound that you're recording may be volatile, very loud, or very quiet at times. Or if you have to give the recorder to someone that doesn't know how to use the recorder and you just want to be able to give them something that you know will capture the sound. In those instances, the audio engineer, the sound technician, the editor recognizes they're moving into a longer, more laborious workflow that takes more steps to provide a finished result. Whenever I record a band, I have multiple ways to record, and it's usually in 32-bit float because I'm not there. And recording live is a situation where you'd have to recover, which means I'd need the workflow to do it. 32-bit float. If I'm going to be monitoring the soundboard, I'd still record a live band in my individual channels in 32-bit float if I had the opportunity. I would use regular old-fashioned 24-bit 48K for any spoken voice, right? I would just set my levels. And if I was worried on things like the Zoom H1e and H6 or any of your other recorders, I would set a safety track at minus 12 decibels in the event that my sound was too loud and the level clipped for some reason because of an unexpected loud noise. These things just take experience, which would make you a better sound engineer, giving you better stuff in the first place. So my answer is get on it, learn it. But buying into the hype of 32-bit float recording does not help you when you don't know what you're doing in the first place. And it's not a difficult thing. I actually think Zoom did a great job by providing a $100 32-bit float recorder. I have no problem with what Zoom has done. If we could get past the fact that you, the person trying to use it, only knows what Zoom has told you. So they've done no effort to educate you as a customer on how to use it, and you didn't really either, because most of you didn't even watch this far into the video. Those that did actually now know why and how to use 32-bit float when it's important. And if you don't have the ability on your Zoom H1 Essential to record in anything other than 32-bit float, then you're making the choice to constantly have a post-production workflow. My suggestion might at that point in time be check out the Zoom or check out the tascam H6, which I don't really care for, or the H8, which I like quite a bit. Yes, it's about 4 times the cost of the H1e, but it's got many more capabilities that are very, very, very much more helpful for you as a sound recorder. So, I hope I answered your questions. If I did, leave a like and a comment below. Hook me up using a super thanks. It's right down there. Also, send me any questions you have. I answer all subscriber questions. And remember, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye for now.